Hello. This journey begins with word woman. Who is woman? What does the word woman mean? Well, as indicated in the dictionary, woman is a counterpart of man. One of the only two sexes in the world. And throughout history, man and woman have been living together. It seems like we are very close. Well, I don't have to mention that. But when it comes to understanding each other, I think there is a distance between man and woman when it really like understanding each other for a fact. Well, if we understand each other totally, maybe the life would end. Anyhow, so in the beginning, I wanted to make a content on women's rights, especially in Mongolia. And we, MNB World team, talked about many ideas, what is women's rights, and how to make the content, all that. But really, when I asked myself, do I know what the woman's right is? What the feminism is? What's the situation in Mongolia when it comes to women's right? Its violation and its protection. Who's doing what? I had no answers. The women's right word has been talked about, well, as I Googled it, I searched it. The women's right has been talked about for last 2 centuries, but to be honest, I never really looked into what it is really. I don't have an answer. I don't have a vague idea. So I decided to find answers to all these questions. What is women's right? What is the difference between men and women? What's the situation in Mongolia relating to women's right and its protection? How it's being violated? So, let the journey begin from here. So we are here at the, here's the, just
The question of the difference between man and woman is very much socially constructed.
Socially constructed.
When I say socially constructed, it means there is much ideology or much, let's say, belief or perspectives about the difference instead of exact differences. So we believe there is such differences, and that belief is very much socially constructed in different cultures. So there's 2 level of things. One is the exact physical, biological, or maybe psychological, or maybe genetic differences, and that is quite precise and concrete.
So
but
these
besides
are scientific facts.
these are quite concrete differences. But besides that, we imagine different differences, and we make different differences, and those differences we believe man and woman to have is socially constructed, or socially motivated, or socially, let's say, developed, evolved. And that means those imagined differences doesn't have to be scientifically proven or proven by hard science.
Well, when we talk about the gender, we always tend to be more abstract, but it's not something abstract. Think about your mother, your sisters. So these are women, and what the difference between you, me, and them, right? So we should be more concrete about the subject. So the difference is
What are the concrete facts then?
The truth is that they're a little bit more physically weak, but probably more morally strong than men. Yeah. So the hard times, men always come to women for support, aren't we?
I would like to know about the difference between men and women according to Buddhist religion, Buddhist tradition.
About the difference between the men and women in Buddhist teaching and as well as in the practice. So according to the Buddha's teaching, well, physically, there is a difference between men and women. Physically.
Okay.
But intellectually, there is no difference.
Intellectually, there's no difference.
There is no difference. Men and women are equal in intelligence level.
Okay. Well, thank you, Ms. Aruna, for receiving us here. And as I told you on the phone, we are doing this program on women's rights, especially in Mongolia. But we would like to know the difference between man and woman. First, we want to find out. So from your personal perspective, what's the difference?
Oh, it's a very interesting question. First of all, I think in terms of managing any organization or any projects, doing any art, I think male are more goal-oriented.
Okay, male are goal-oriented,
More goal-oriented because they know the goal and then they would go for this goal no matter what's going to happen.
Okay.
I think most of women is care about the process that achieving to the goal. If you understand the difference of between men and women, it's much easier. You can create a relationship, and no matter it's your family or it's your work, it's you're voting for someone. So you understand, and then we should use the strength for the better purpose, and then consider if we're different.
Okay.
For example, we believe that maybe women are weak. But how and who defines whether women are weaker than man or woman than man? So it's like, but it is kind of a very common.
But they are physically weak.
Well,
Weaker than men.
ooh, that's not true actually. Imagine if there's a wrestler champion woman or a boxer, she will be more powerful than you and me. I'm not sure whether you can defend an Olympic champion wrestler woman.
No.
We might not. So this is basically it. So even that doesn't have to be right. So most of the differences we believe that men and women have is quite generic. Means like generalization.
Women are more, stable. It's no wonder that women represented by triangular shaped with heavier bottom and men with narrow bottom, right?
Okay, can you elaborate on that?
Well, even if you go to a bathroom, there is like a triangle shape, right? So if a triangle shape turns downwards, it's a man, and if it turns up, then it's women's bathroom, right?
So you are referring to those shapes as women being stable.
Yes.
Stable.
Yeah.
In what term?
Well, I used to work in the Ministry of Justice, and the state penitentiary institution belongs it's under the Ministry of Justice. And I had a chance to conversate with many personnel. And what I've learned is it's very difficult to sway women. It's difficult to make them criminals. But if they're criminals, then it's very difficult to correct them.
Really?
Yeah, than men.
I would say in Buddhism, because I said men and women are equal.
Yes.
So, and also they call it sentient being, which means sense, feeling. So the feeling of man and woman towards the happiness and suffering is the equal. Yeah. So whatever makes you happy, whatever makes you sad is the equal, regardless of man and woman. So there is spiritually as well as like as a human being.
Yeah.
Yeah. But another difference, like physically different, and what another difference could be is just the responsibility, which means in it's an Indian tradition as well in Buddhist tradition. It's called the dharma. Dharma means responsibility. If you're a man, you have certain responsibilities. If you're a woman, you have certain responsibilities. If you're a husband, you have certain responsibilities. If you are a wife, you have certain responsibilities. And in the same way, each and everyone has the responsibility. As been a lecturer, as been a student, as been a politician, each and everyone has the responsibility and divided. And as long as they fulfill those responsibilities, they maintain the name of being a mother, being a father, being a politician, being a lecturer, being a student. As long as you cannot fulfill these responsibilities, whatever you could be a politician, you could be a father, you could be a mother, you could be a wife, but in fact, you are not mother, you are not father, you are not a politician, you are not student, you are not teacher.
Hello again. So I've been looking through the footages we have shot, and when it comes to difference between men and women, we are only different physically and biologically. In other areas, we are no different at all, men and women. In areas such as intellectual, emotional, spiritual areas, we are the same. However, the belief that we have come to believe throughout our lives are socially constructed. For example, men are smarter than women, or women are weaker than men. So these are socially constructed beliefs. And in fact, these beliefs have been evolving throughout the history of humanity. And there was one really interesting aspect that Dr. Lautenchik mentioned, and it was about men and women's responsibility, which are given by nature. And when you really think about that, we human beings are natural animals, and we are dictated by the nature. So females have motherly responsibilities, and males have fatherly responsibilities. Well, from here on, I want to look into women's rights a little deeper, and I want to find out the origin of this term, of this movement, especially in Mongolia. We would like to know if there is a concept regarding women's right.
First, we have to look at from where those terms came up. So we look at the origin of the terms first. But I will stop by saying this. First, we have to investigate and usage and interpretation. What is women's right? And then we have to talk about universalism or particularism. Is there any universal right, human right, or whatever right, women's right? But is there any particular aspect of what does it mean, women's right?
Эмэгтэйчүүдийн эрх Монголд хизээнээс эхэлж яригдж эхэлсэн талаар хэлж өгөөч.
Ёс заншлын түвшинд бол эмэгтэйчүүдийн эрх бол байж л байсан. Тий. Албан ёсоор одоо юу гэдэг ардын ёсгол ялаад л 1924 онд эмэгтэйчүүдийн эрхийн асуудлыг яриад эрхийн асуудлыг ярихдаа эмэгтэйчүүд сурч боловсрох хэрэгтэй байх хэрэгтэй. Сонгуул өгдөг хэрэгтэй баймаар байна гэдэг асуудал ярьж анх эрхийн асуудлын тухай албан ёсчиж явж исэн юм түүхтэй
24 оноос
1924 оноос 24 онд 23 онд ардын явсгал ялсан шүү дээ. Тэгээ 24 онд энэ эрхийн асуудлаа ярингуудаа эмэгтэйчүүдийн байгууллага байгуулагдсан түүхтэй.
Монголд тийм эртнээс эмэгтэйчүүдийн байгууллага байгуулагдсан.
Тэгээ Монголын эмэгтэйчүүдийн холбоо гэдэг манай энэ байгууллага чинь одоо энэ жил 95 жилийн ойн болж байгаа. Азийн анхны эмэгтэйчүүдийн байгууллага. Азийн түвшинд бол бас анхдагч.
The Mongolian Women's Organization was first established in 1924 as the Bureau for Women's Education. In 1924, women's right to vote was inserted in the constitution. The first chair of the organization was Miss Pagmdolum Demdeng. Her husband was the great Mongolian writer De Natsagdorj. The 95-year-old Mongolian Women's Federation is the first women's organization that was established in Asia.
When there's society, the society has to have law that could hold the society together. So in that construction, the law construction, what is the difference between women's right and basic human right? Do you know what I mean?
Okay. After basic human rights and children's rights, probably women's rights is the most, let's say, talked subject compared to probably man's right issue. And I think I should start talking about the idea of human rights. It is a Western construction. In the Roman law, man or the household head had the supreme sovereign power to rule the whole family. And the head of the household had the right to execute, means to kill, like his servants, including wives, maybe children, if they misbehave.
In the Roman Empire?
In the Roman Empire. So in some cultures, man had such supreme sovereign power or rights to rule. And against this kind of, let's say, law or this kind of culture, women's right needed to be protected.
Okay.
So why we talk about human right, or why do we talk about women's right? To protect them. From what? From man. So in certain cultures, when where women's rights were, let's say, violated, where women regarded as lower than man, those cultures needed to develop the idea of women's rights. And that is from Roman times, for example, or maybe in other cultures as well.
The NGO network itself was founded in 2000 by over 30 women's non-governmental organizations. At the time, they had a fairly broad idea about why women need to come together as one organization, and they decided to come together as a network, and that in itself is quite important because if you might remember, during socialist period there was a big mass organization that was called the Women's Council. So the organizational forms, collective forms of people coming together, and especially units or organizations, groups coming together during socialism was very hierarchical. There was an umbrella body, and then there were members, and it was a top-down structure. After 1990, there were different kinds of attempts on the parts of different NGOs to find a different collective format. So in 2000, when women's NGOs decided to come together in order to unite their voices to, let's say, influence policy, they did not want to come together as a federation, but decided to call themselves a network. So it denotes a more horizontal form of working together as independent organizations, right? However, it wasn't until about 2007 when the network became what it is today, MonFemNet National Network, which is a feminist human rights advocacy organization that is membership-based, but it is not member service. It is a public service non-governmental organization. One of the key areas of MonFem Network is education and awareness raising. You know, it is not enough to yell loudly, oh, this happened, that happened, you know, a person was beaten up or a woman was, you know, subjected to harassment, but we need to do something before it happens. And so there is a lot of MonFemNet's energy goes into that kind of, what we say, promoting a culture that is supportive of gender equality, that is respectful of human dignity of every person, and that is egalitarian.
Well, for me personally, there is no such thing as women's rights.
Okay.
There is a universal right of a human being to be happy, treated with dignity, aren't we?
Yes.
So the problem is, in most of societies, women don't get this treatment. So hence, this term, women's right, appeared. But would you agree, if there is a women's right, then it would be like men's right?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Why nobody's talking about men's rights?
Yeah, so that just happened because women are not enjoying the same rights as men in terms of this possibility of reaching happiness and justice and being treated equally. So different countries, different cultures, they treat this issue, they treat women differently.
Well, thank you for receiving us in your office. And first of all, my very first question is, what does women's rights mean from legal perspective?
Okay, when you talk about a woman's rights, we're not talking about some alien rights apart from human rights. As their famous quote says that women's rights are human rights, which means when you talk about women's rights, we mean regardless of their sex and gender, or sometimes sexual orientation and gender identity, everybody has entitled to their rights. But still, in many parts of the world, including Mongolia, just because they're a man, or just because they're a woman, or just because they are gay or lesbian, many rights listed in the Constitution and other legal instruments not really fulfilled in real life. So that's why we talk about women's rights. Because
why men are not talking about men's rights?
Because
not so much, not as much as women.
Because it's because of this legal system and because of this social structure which supports the legal system, you know, which defines how law will be implemented in real life. It's usually the disadvantages on the woman, so that woman talks about it more because we have to realize our rights. It's just the situation is that many women are not really equal. Even though in the law, even though in the formal legislation, in the real realization and real exercise is totally different. So that many women's rights efforts and movements usually goes for a real implementations of the law.
We are waiting for Miss Nara. She's a singer, and in the last parliament member election, she was a candidate for parliament member, and so many single mothers support her because she's a single mother and she is not secretive about her status, and
I wanted to ask her about the situation of single mothers living in Mongolia. I hope she's on the way.
Эмэгтэйчүүдийн ирэх гэдэг айгүй их яригддаг. Тэгсэн мөртлөө ингээд эрэгтэй хүн эмэгтэй хүн ингээд аваад үзэхээр эмэгтэйчүүд нь илүү давуу эрэгтэй юм шиг те. Тэгээд тэр эрхийн тухайд байнга л ярьдаг. Тэр эрхийн төлөө байнга л тэмцдэг те. Байгаль тэр эрхийг одоо тунхагладаг, зарладаг. Тэгсэн мөртлөө хамгийн сонин нь одоо юу гэдгийг одоо яг ингээ хууль нэгээ заасан яг эмэгтэй хүний эрх бол эрэгтэй хүний эрх бол гизэн байхгүй. Тэгсэн мөртлөө хамгийн их зөрчигддөг яг тэр асуудал нь эмэгтэйчүүдийн эрх байдаг байхгүй юу? Тэгэхээр зөрчигдөл. Тий. Хамгаалах гал байдаг илүү их одоо зарлан тунхагладаг. Тэгсэн мөртлөө хамгийн их зөрчигддөг, хамгийн их хамгаалагдаж чаддгүй тийм зүйл байдаг. За жишээлбэл ажлын байран дээр л гэхэд те одоо юу гэдгийг эмэгтэй хүн бол арай одоо давуу их одоо ачааллыг үүрнэ байдаг юм уу. За эсвэл гэр бүлийн амьдралд үзье л да тий. Эсвэл нэг эмэгтэй хүн нэг гэртээ яг нэг юм тогтсон ойлголттой тий одоо өөрийгөө хөгжүүлэх тий аха. Тий ерөөсөл нэг юм одоо ахуйн үйлчилгээний одоо зориулалттай хүн мэт энэ ойлголт бол яг одоо түгээмэл болцсон байхгүй. Тэгэхээр одоо энэ ойлголтыг эвдэхийн төлөө эмэгтэйчүүд айгүй их явж байгаа. Энэ тэнд одоо дэлхийд дахиндтэй маш олон хөдөлгөөнүүд өрнөдөг.
If you see some international evaluation on Mongolian gender equality, or as a lawyer, if I read the laws, for example, in the constitution we have non-discrimination clause based on sex, and also in the list of rights, like the list of human rights, there is this women and men are equal in all of their parts of life, like social, economic, and family, and political life. It should be equal. And also we have law on gender equality and law on combating domestic violence, etc. And a lot of, for example, labor law has some clauses protecting women's rights. But these are formal laws. Formal, I mean on the paper. You know, it's on the paper. Real issue is if they are really implemented on the ground. So comparably, I would say in the legal terms, in a legal on paper, we are really in a good position. Still, we have
a good constitution. We have a good,
good laws,
written laws,
and good probably lower level of legislations as well. But of course, we have to go far. Of course, there are. If we talk about specific issues, we can talk more. But still, in the real issues, implementation, I would say. Yeah.
To be honest, I think I was against the idea of women's rights, because I thought, well, men and women, no matter what, live together, and we balance each other's weaknesses out. Why so much noise about women's rights and all these fight and movements, right? And then again, maybe because I was a typical ignorant man who was raised in traditional patriarchal society with traditional patriarchal norms and standards. And when someone grows up in that norm and in that traditional society without questioning, that person becomes oblivious to what happens to the other people, the others in that society. So I want to put myself in the shoes of Mongolian women this time, and to really see our society from different angles.